Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and yesterday I posted a video about why I would rather be a YouTube guitarist than play in a band. If you haven't checked that video out, I'll make sure that the link is at the end of this video. But you know, I had to bring up a few negative things that I've experienced in the past in bands. So you know what? I thought, hey, let's get the negative stuff out of the way and move forward. So I'm going to today help you by giving you my top red flags to watch out for when you're playing in a band. Now, I want to start this video by saying, guys, you know, I have not played live or in a band in a number of years by choice. I get into that in that video that I mentioned. But, you know, I've changed. I've come a long way as a human being, hopefully. I'm a lot better communicator. But I'm going to name these things that happened to me that I feel is of value to help you as a musician starting out. I also want to point out that often when we're trying to get a band or a project together, sometimes we'll overlook the red flags because we're looking for convenience sometimes rather than quality. Okay, once you've been around for a while, you'll get what I'm talking about. So, these are in no particular order. Here's a very easy one. When the person is showing up late for rehearsals and late for gigs, it can get very irritating. Hey, things happen. Could be bad weather, there could be vehicle problems. Sometimes it happens, I know it's happened to me. But when this starts to become a consistent pattern with somebody, you know something's not quite right there. Showing up late for a gig, especially if you're a band providing your own PA system and lighting, that's a classic trick that people will do to get out of doing more work than they have to. But the problem is they're putting more work on the other band members, and at the end of the night, they're going to have their hand out wanting to get paid just like everyone else. Classic sign to watch out for. If they can't show up to rehearsal on time too, yes, sometimes things happen, but if it's a habit, you want to watch out for that. When people don't know the material, I will give you guys an example. Many years ago, I was putting together a band and I auditioned a bass player who also sang, and we met, told him what I was looking for, he agreed to everything, gave him the CDs with all the material he needed to learn, and he had a couple of weeks to work on the material. We were under the impression that he was good to go. We had a rehearsal, and from the first bar of the first song, he had all these notes in front of him, and then he said, "Sorry guys, I've been really busy. I haven't had much time to work on the material." That was a big warning sign for things to come, but unfortunately, being the dummy that I was, I went for convenience over quality, and I paid a big price for it down the road. Sometimes things happen. You show up to a rehearsal, say, "Guys, I didn't get a chance to get all the material down, but I did work on this and this song." Yes, sometimes things happen. But right off the bat, that's not leaving a good impression. Something, again, to watch out for. For those of you that have been following my channel for a while, whether it's watching my reaction videos, my interviews, some of my lessons, one of the things that I look for with a drummer, if I'm auditioning a drummer, I want to see good meter. Good meter is the ability that if you're playing a song at 100 beats a minute live, that it stays roughly around 100 beats per minute. If it's, you know, slowing down to 92 and then going up to 112, it's not good. Even the audience that isn't musically trained, they'll start to go, what's going on here? I will not play with a drummer who sucks. I've been there, it's not good. If the drummer isn't good, you've seen me reference many times that the drummer is the true heartbeat of the band. He really is the core of the band. If the drummer has bad meter or his rolls are out of time and he sucks, the whole band's going to suck. It doesn't matter how good you play guitar. It doesn't matter how good you can sing. It doesn't matter how hot of a lead singer you have. It doesn't matter. The band's going to suck. Now, I understand sometimes taking constructive criticism isn't always easy. I've been in that situation and you're kind of like, but sometimes if you just sit and think about it, I've been in that situation with a drummer that I can think of who had a really bad meter, but for some reason he thought he was Alex Van Halen. He was not. I had a lot of bad feedback from a lot of the audience. Even sometimes when we get chances to play at some of the better clubs, they would say, "Look, the drummer sucks." All I could politely do is say, "Look, you really need to work with a metronome and work on your meter." He didn't get it. Still doesn't get it to this day, I'm sure. Watch for a drummer's meter. I don't care when I audition a drummer. I don't care about all the other crazy stuff. The first thing is their meter. If you start a project with a drummer with a bad meter, out of convenience, you're going to have problems. If you're in a band with someone who is in a very problematic relationship, inherently you're going to be taking on some of that. So what are the warning signs for this? Okay, easy warning signs. You know, I'm not averse to someone showing up to a band rehearsal with their partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. I don't care. But if it becomes a habit, then that bothers me because I didn't sign up to play with that person's partner. Other ways that you can check, not just the showing up all the time with their girlfriend to the band rehearsals, which is a little weird, is when you send them an email and you get an email back and you're like, yeah, I don't know if this person was the person who actually sent me back an email. If you notice that the person's partner is running them around by the nose, showing up, interrupting band rehearsals, constantly calling him when you're trying to jam, or her, when you're trying to jam. I've seen it a lot. I played in a band one time with a female who had a problematic boyfriend. When he would come out to the gigs, he would drink. And when he would drink, he got very aggressive. And I also remember one time he was watching the door, collecting the money from the crowd, which was part of the payment for the band. I remember during the night I watched over, I saw him tell people to go in for free. And it's like, that's our money. I told you the story the other night on my last video about why I prefer to be a YouTube guitar player than play in a band. When I played in a band with a fellow whose wife caused a lot of drama and a lot of problems. I didn't sign up to play with her, man. The warning signs are always there. I can remember another band I played in. The fellow's girlfriend always came to all the gigs and all the setups. She never left him alone. I'm speculating it's because in a previous band, he invited an old girlfriend to come to his gig when she was there. After time, she'd be complaining to me about how busy the band was, and she would take her negative attitude out on me. And I'd say to him, well, you told me you wanted to be as busy as possible. Oh, yeah, that's okay. But like, can you kind of put a collar on her? And not in that way, but can you put a muzzle on her? Because I don't want to listen to the BS. I've got to work. I've got to perform. I don't need to listen to this crap. When you play in a band with someone who has a problematic relationship, you're going to be taking it on. Now, we're talking about taking on other people's problems. If you play in a band with someone who has a drug issue or a drinking issue, inherently, you're going to be taking some of that on too. I said the story the other night, why I prefer to be a YouTube guitar player than play in a band. I played briefly in a band where I was providing the sound and lighting, and the singer and the drummer, they got drunk and took off at the end of the night and didn't help me with any of the equipment. Now, I always found that really weird because, you know, when you have an agreement to be a business band, remember, a fun band, who cares? If you want to get drunk and just jam, make noise on the weekends, no problem. But when you agree to be a business band, I could never understand why people felt when we're getting paid to provide a service, why that gave them free license to be so unprofessional and do that on stage. I could never understand that or what would go on in someone's mind to do that. Warning signs, you're playing at a rehearsal, or even the first rehearsal and they show up with a case of beer and they drink all of it. That is a warning sign. Again, do you put up with it out of convenience or just being a nice person? Or should you think, what is this going to be like at an actual gig? Again, proceed at your own risk. When you play in a band with someone who has money problems. Now, granted, I have been there. I know what it's like to be broke playing in a band, but I always still tried to do what I could, have a positive attitude, and contribute when and where I could. I remember one time playing in a band with someone who used to say to me, whatever I need in life, God will provide for me. And I used to think, well, I must be God because I'm always giving you rides and lending you money. You know, to be fair, sometimes people can be down on their luck. But if you're in a band with someone who's got a good attitude, they're a hard worker, and they contribute a lot, sometimes it might be worth giving them a ride to the rehearsals or the gigs. But you might want to just have an arrangement about, hey, you know, could you throw in a few bucks for fuel? Or could you... That's up to you, but it's something to be very wary about. Because playing in a band, there are expenses, and it does cost money. The half in, half out attitude. What is that? Well, if you've ever played in a band with someone who was they're kind of in the band, but they're kind of like, I remember many years ago playing in a band with a very, very talented guy who was always complaining to me about, oh, I'm an original band. I wish I also had a cover band where I could make some money. When I presented the opportunity to him, he was like, well, you know, let's see how it goes. He would show up often late to rehearsals, late to set things up, and most of the time he didn't work on the material. He would show up and not have the material worked on, and quite frequently he would cancel the night before a rehearsal. So when you look back at that, I feel that he really did an injustice. It's like, look, like, why do you want to be a part of something if you're going to put no effort in it? You're kind of dooming it to fail already. I have observed that. I would warn people about that. Do you just put up with it out of convenience? Or do you sit the person down and say, look, I don't think we're on the same page here. You know, I really need someone who's going to put their best foot forward with this. That is what I call the half in, half out attitude. The resistor. What is the resistor? Now, granted, guys, when I was in a band, I had a very type A personality. I was the type of guy who liked to get things done. Again, is it a fun band or is it a business band? I remember one time playing in a band with someone who was a very talented musician. At that time, I was between jobs and I wanted the band to gig frequently, and I was very clear about that in the original band agreement. He had a very good paying job, but his attitude was of resistance. What I mean by that is, you know, there's a time to sit down as a band and say, look, guys, I'm struggling with this, or can we talk about that, or I don't like this, can we figure it out? Absolutely. But when you play in a band with someone who's just being difficult for the sake of being difficult, it's not good. I remember with this fellow, at the beginning of the band, he said, I'll do the website. Cool. All right, man. I appreciate you doing that. Well, after 9 or 10 months, there was no website. He was never talking about it. And I remember kind of starting to ask him, like, you know, I've given almost a year to this band. Like, what's going on here? And it really ruffled his feathers and really bothered him the wrong way. After about a year, I just thought, you know, boys, sorry, we've got a chemistry issue. This isn't working. I got to move on. And they ended up folding. You know, very talented guy. I still see he still has his music ventures going, and that's great. He's very talented. I wish him all the best. But I can tell you, if you like to get things done, if you're working with someone who has that, who likes to procrastinate and have the resistor attitude, meaning not like resistance, like, well, I think it would be better if we did this. If they're just saying, I'm going to be difficult just so you don't get your way, not a good sign. If they don't have reliable transportation. Now, we've also talked about this with someone who's having money problems, but reliable transportation, that can be an issue, especially if you really have to go out of your way to pick people up in bands. I've been in those situations where, you know, they never offer you any money after they're paid, or they don't, if they're not paying for a vehicle, they're not paying insurance, they're not paying for fuel, they don't tend to appreciate the expenses going into it. If it's a really good person who really has a good attitude and puts a lot of work into things, maybe it's worth the extra effort if you can talk to them and make an arrangement. But with a lot of people, sometimes it just doesn't work and becomes a real pain in the rear end. Are you doing it because of convenience? It's easier to do that than to have to look for someone else. Guys, the biggest one is people that just don't keep band agreements. I've been in those situations where you meet, you talk, you say, look, there's money going to be going into this. This is what I'm looking for. Are you okay with this, this, and this? And people say, yep, 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 yep. Absolutely, that's what I want. But then things get going and they turn out to not be that type of person. It's a lot like being in a relationship. Again, I've said this a million times. In the beginning with a lot of people, you'll start dating. They're nice, they're amazing in the beginning. After a while, things get going, they start to get comfortable, and then they start to change, and then you're like, this really isn't the person that they were advertising themselves to be. Very much so with bands. Again, guys, I want to say that not all my experiences have been bad. I've met a lot of wonderful musicians, made some really good friends. I played some wonderful gigs, wonderful venues. I've had some really good paying gigs, some great experiences. But I just thought, you know what? Part of the reason I started this channel is I don't want people out there to make my mistakes. This is another way with my channel I can reach out and help you. Have you ever experienced anything like this in your bands or in dealing with other musicians? Remember to comment below. Let me know if this helps you out or not. Again, nothing against bands, but it's a very tough slog and you're rolling the dice. It is a relationship for sure. Remember, guys, practice hard, but practice smart. No excuses, and we'll see you soon.